Welcome to the Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting, November 19th, 2013. We'll begin the meeting with the salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Poland, call the roll, please.
Mr. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Spikes?
Here.
Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dents?
Here.
Mr. Rocket?
Here.
Evening. I'm going to do some rearranging of our agenda this evening. Moving item 5 up to our first item for the night. And the chair will entertain a motion at this time to table item 5 to a date or to a date in the future.
So moved. Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. There is pending litigation out of the city of Erie that deals with a law very, very similar to the one that this board is considering. And while that law makes its way through the Pennsylvania court system, the board feels it's best to wait and see how that case comes out. Depending on how that case is decided, that will inform this board as well as other boards in the Commonwealth as to the legality of the law that's being proposed here. So we are going to move also item 2 up, certificate of appropriateness for 3 South Main Street. Mr. Gray?
Yes, this is a certificate of appropriateness, as mentioned, for 3 South Main Street, tax map parcel 13-02-311-001. They are looking to replace the cedar shingle roof on the 2-story addition at the Gambrell Roof House. The applicant is Historic Fallsington, Inc. This has been reviewed and approved by the HARB Board, and the Board of Supervisors is asked to consider this certificate of appropriateness.
Okay, I was looking to see if Ms. Armour from the Historic Fallsington was here. I don't see her. I know I've had a conversation with her about the work itself, and I think the board has already, I know the board's already approved a waiver for the permits for that roof repair. I don't know if there was any other questions or comments from board members?
No. No.
Okay. All right, then, is there a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for 3 South Main Street?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, item 3 is Farrell's Hills Mall, waiver of land development. This is 610 Lincoln Highway. Mr. Gray?
Yes, the applicant for this project is New Century Property Group. They are looking for a reconstruction of walkways and interior renovations for use as retail stores and potential commercial flex space. Representing the applicant tonight is Mr. Tom Hecker.
Thank you, Mr. Gray, and members of the board. Good evening. Tom Hecker on behalf of the applicant. We're here tonight for your consideration of a request to approve a waiver of land development plan. Hopefully, it's a happy occasion for the township. The building, which is the subject of this application, is the old Pathmark store, which has been vacant, to the best of my knowledge, for about 20 years. Morris Steinberg, who is with me, is the owner, the proud new owner of the property. He located his business at the present location that he's at about 18 years ago, a couple years after Pathmark vacated, and has been looking at that vacant property for years. Fortunately, his business has grown, and he decided that he would finally move forward, make an offer on the property. That offer was accepted, and now is the owner of the property. Pathmark building, as you may recall, is approximately 45,000 square feet. Morris has been able to obtain 2 tenants. One is the Dollar Tree, which will occupy 10,000 square feet. Morris will move his garden center into the building and occupy another 24,000 square feet. The balance of the approximate 10,000 square feet that's left will be divided to some other tenant spaces ranging perhaps from 1,200 to 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, depending upon what users are interested in that property. This is primarily basically taking the existing building and dividing it into usable tenant space. Some exterior improvements are going to be made, obviously, in connection with this project. It involves the installation of new handicap parking spaces, removal of some sidewalks, reinstallation of the sidewalks, new electric utility service, and the installation of a meter pit. But primarily, and I should add as well, there's some couple sections of pavement that are going to be removed, reinstalled. The parking lot will be resurfaced. It'll be restriped, obviously. But I think most importantly is what's going to happen to the exterior of the building. As you can see, there's a new facade that's being added to the building to give it certainly a much updated and upscale appearance. As you can see, the Dollar Tree is to be located on the Orleans Avenue side of the property, the garden center at the other end, and then the tenant spaces in between that. There's not a whole lot that we normally deal with in terms of land development because this is an existing property. It's already constructed, and the improvements are pretty much as I have described them to you. Have any questions about the specifics of what Morris is proposing to do? We're happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can address the engineer's review letter.
Comments or questions from board members regarding just general questions about nature of the tenants or the work on the building itself before we look at the review letter?
No.
Okay.
Okay. If we can turn our attention to the review letter of the Township Engineer, it's dated October 16, 2013. There are several items which are will comply. There's a few items which are waiver requests and a couple that we need to talk about. The first item deals with the location of lighting. There are existing light standards that are in the parking lot. They will obviously be illuminated. There will be wall pack lighting that's added to the building. I think the engineer is asking us to simply identify on the plan the location of the existing lights that will be illuminated and as well as wall pack. So item number 1 is a will comply item. 20942B2 basically deals with landscaping loading areas which can be visible to residential or other commercial districts. On the site plan, the area to the rear of this property is heavily wooded. There's no development, anything proposed for that. That's going to remain. There's an area to the rear of the building that on an angle may be visible to the folks Avonrow. So it's the applicant's intention to add landscaping, obviously subject to the review by the township engineer, which will screen that one visible area. Otherwise, we don't think there's any additional landscaping that needs to be provided. So I guess that's a will comply item. 20942B3 is a zoning ordinance requirement that states that each off-street parking area has to have a minimum of the equivalent of 1 parking space for every 30 parking spaces, landscape with ground cover, trees, or shrubs. In this item, although it's under the zoning ordinance, this obviously is a non-conforming condition, and there are a couple items under the subdivision and land development ordinance which we are requesting waivers on, which if the waivers are granted, we believe covers this item. So if we can defer that till we get into the subdivision and land development ordinance section. And lastly, under zoning, 20942H10 requires 5.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. We will comply with this request to add the parking to the plan. Currently, the requirement is for 248 parking spaces. There are 325 spaces that exist. We'll be losing 4 of those spaces by the addition of handicap, but we still have 321 spaces. And we'll note on the plan that only those permitted uses requiring parking equal to or less than retail sales are allowed, so that we'll have to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the township when Morris is able to obtain other users that we have sufficient parking, and we believe we do. We think there's excess parking. Under subdivision and land development ordinance, the requirement for no less than 15 feet of open space between the curb line of any parking areas and the outside wall of any building. That's a condition that exists certainly on this side of the building where we are doing some sidewalk work, so we're asking for a waiver on that requirement to install sidewalk, and obviously the parking is shown on the plan.
The building's sprinkled, so as far as having cars up against the building or close to the building.
Next item deals with the handicap stalls to be revised. That's a will comply item. The curb radii under the next item to be labeled, that's a will comply. The next item, 19131G1, and the one after that, G2, and also 2 after that, 19137G4, all deal with the issue of landscaping in the parking lot. The first one that requires planting beds at intervals not to exceed 20 spaces. The next one dealing with the curb raised planting beds to be planted with 1 shade tree per bed. And then 37G4, the tree of 1.5-inch caliper for every 6 parking spaces in single rows, and 1.5 caliper for every 12 parking spaces in double rows. These are items that we're requesting waivers on. Again, it's existing conditions. There will be obviously improvements to the parking lot in terms of it being resurfaced and striped, but we think that it's an existing condition, and with the upgrades to the building and upgrades to the parking lot, it'll be sufficient, so we're asking for waivers on those items. 19131H, going back one, talks about the details for heavy-duty paving. That's a will comply on where the paving is being removed to install the improvements that we talked about. New paving will be added that will comply with the requirements of the Falls Township design details. The other areas that are not being removed are going to be resurfaced, and the striping will be added. Next one is the lighting plan. That's a will comply. 19139G, following that, is the section of the ordinance that requires land developments having frontage on a street to provide sidewalks on both sides of these streets. This property has frontage on both Arlene's Avenue and on Trenton Avenue. We've asked for a waiver on those items. With regard to Trenton Avenue, we would add a offer of an easement on the plan to the township in the event that the township undertakes a comprehensive sidewalk program along Trenton Avenue. Then the easement would be in place for that to happen. With regard to Arlene's Avenue, there are sidewalks on the opposite side of Arlene's Avenue. We've asked for a waiver. The Township Planning Commission did not recommend the granting of that waiver. We're bringing that matter before the board for your consideration, again, because there's sidewalks on the other side of Arlene's Avenue. Page 3, section 19148A is the requirement for street trees along the side of all streets where suitable street trees do not exist. There are obviously substantial trees along Trenton because of that wooded lot which are remaining. There's simply no room to put additional trees along Arlene's Avenue because of the shallowness of that grass area, the curbing, and utilities that lie within that area as well. So that's a waiver request. 19148B also references street trees being 40 feet apart, so obviously that follows that that's a waiver request. And 19148E, dealing with street trees being planted within the 10-foot wide planting easement behind the right-of-way line, if you look at the plan, on the site plan, you'll see there just simply isn't sufficient room for the granting of that kind of easement behind the right-of-way line. You only have a couple of feet behind the right-of-way line. So that's a waiver request. 19151H1, outdoor collection stations, that's a will comply. 19152, soil erosion sedimentation control, that's a will comply. 19152-1 deals with identification of all natural resources on the site. Note will be added to that effect to the plan, so that's a will comply. 19151.C references site capacity calculations. That's a will comply. 19159 references a requirement for providing streetlights. It's referenced along Arlene's Avenue and Trenton Road as required by sections of the ordinance. We believe that there's sufficient lighting. Right now it looks dark because the parking lot lights haven't been lit for 20 years, and the building is dark. There will be wall pack lighting added to the building, so we believe there'll be sufficient lighting. 19161A, sidewalks on both sides of streets. Again, we're talking about Arlene's Avenue and Trenton Road. We talked about that before. We're happy to grant the easement on Trenton. We're asking for a waiver along Arlene's Avenue. 19164A, service letter from the appropriate authority for water service, and the following comment, 19166A, service letter for sanitary sewer service, that's a will comply. And then lastly, page 4, we've asked for a waiver, 19178C2, for the requirement to provide all existing features within 200 feet. It's really a partial waiver. We'll provide the aerial, which often is accepted in lieu of actually having to survey additional property beyond your own property lines. 19178C4, the location of all underground utilities is will comply. 19178C8, requiring site capacity calculations, that's a will comply. This 19178DE, a note to be placed on the plan indicating that sewage facilities planning module application has been submitted. We will provide proof to the township engineer with regard to the status. We do not believe that a full module will be required, and we'll obtain some documentation to that effect. There are 9 EDUs that exist allocated for this site that remain. We think that's going to be sufficient. And the record plan with signature blocks, that's a will comply item. Under the general comments, obviously, any comments of the fire marshal will be addressed. That's a will comply. Construction details under the Falls Township design standards is a will comply. And lastly, all comments from the traffic engineer must be addressed. The only comment that the traffic engineer made that we would discuss with the board is the request to do a full traffic study for this location. We've talked about that at the Planning Commission. We've talked about it with the professionals. We believe it'll be sufficient. Hopefully it'll be sufficient to the board that we simply provide the counts, the published counts information for retail versus what the property was when it was a supermarket. We believe that will adequately demonstrate that there will be no greater impact on traffic as a result of the space being occupied by retail users. So we would ask for a waiver from that requirement. So that's rather a quick summary with regard to the engineer's review letter. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding any of the items, particularly any of the items that we've asked for waivers on.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to board comment, I just want to kind of verify, taking a look back through the proposed resolution that we have in front of us, because it lists several waivers. I just want to make sure that everything that's in here matches what you had just asked for. So you look for, right here it says, okay, the impact study, traffic study, 3G1, G2, 4. 48A. 48B, 48E, 59. Okay, yeah, everything, all right. So board members taking a look at their proposed ordinance, it does match up, just want to make sure that everything was there. I thought maybe, I hadn't remembered the one waiver being listed in here, and you had mentioned it, and I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. All right, comments or questions for either Mr. Hecker or Mr. Steinberg regarding this project? Mr. Galloway?
Yeah, you mentioned the sidewalk on Orleans Avenue. You're asking for a waiver for your side.
That's correct.
Is that it? And there is a sidewalk on the opposite side from that shopping center down by the side of Avenue.
That it? Yep.
From Lincoln Highway all the way to Trenton Road, it goes around Avonroe, and then there's a crosswalk to into Vermilion Hills.
To make, Mr. Steinberg, just make sure when you speak, you use the microphone, that's all, so it can be recorded.
Also, I'm on site almost every day, and very little pedestrian traffic on that road.
And that's it for now.
Mr. Snipes?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. I mean, the Trenton Road makes sense. I'm not sure about the Arlene's, but we can come back to that since Mr. Galloway already asked about that. On the question of the plantings in the parking lot area, I guess this is, let's see, which section was that?
Several of them.
191 through 37G4. If you're actually going to be resurfacing and working on the parking lot, I wondered if it doesn't make sense to add some of the trees or some of the, planting areas that have been asked for, as that just improves the look and feel of the parking lot. And I understand the existing condition, but it sounds like you're actually going to change the existing condition by resurfacing.
Tom misspoke when he said resurface. That's just getting resealed and restriped in the front. And we think with the new, with the new striping and traffic will flow better than just they cut across a dark parking lot right now. I agree that it's attractive, the trees, but it's also going to limit our parking, and we have more than enough for retail, but looking down the road, as economic conditions change, that it might be necessary to use some of that space for a different use that requires more parking. Also, in the garden center business, it's busy in the spring, and that overflow, those extra spots will come in handy in April and May when we're at our busiest.
Those are my questions. I'll see whether any of my other board members have some of the same concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, I have, I read through the notes from Chairman Binney from the Planning Commission recommending sidewalks along Orleans Avenue, which I'm in favor of as well. I think it was mentioned in here that it should be tied into the crosswalk on Trenton Road, the one that comes across from Vermilion Hills, which I'm in favor of as well. I'm not sure how I feel about the lights, and I'm just going to wait to see what the other board members thought of that, but I think sidewalks are something that's needed. If people hang around, you'll see in our budget proposal we're spending close to $200,000 on sidewalks, so it's something I feel is necessary. Other than that, that's all I have for right now.
Okay, Mr. Dents?
Sorry. I agree with the sidewalks. I saw that you both agreed to the Planning Commission's recommendation for sidewalks. I don't think they're needed on Trenton Road. I do like the idea of the 10-foot easement that we can use. I do like the idea, like Mr. Slimp said, that the planners used to break up the parking lot. We're looking at the picture from Google Earth behind the drugstore in front here. I don't know if that's on your map or not, your picture, that shows the planting beds that actually break up the parking lot. For 25 years or so, people have been just pulling in that side entrance and driving straight across to get to wherever they're going. I guess if everybody else is comfortable with waiving that, I'm comfortable with that as well. But I think the sidewalks, seeing how like Mr. Rocco said, we're putting sidewalks in on New Falls Road is a good idea, on at least the Orleans Avenue side. I drove by there tonight, and it is pretty dark, especially on the Orleans Avenue side. There's absolutely no lighting on either side of the street, on the Avenue or the Orleans side. What are the total number of spaces that you said that you will have when we're all said and done?
321.
321, which is more than the 250 you need.
Yes, but as Mr. Steinberg's indicated, being in the garden center,
Right.
you'll use those spaces, April and May, so.
Other than the sidewalks and the planners, I think that's all I have.
Okay.
I can see the planners, being a problem, like you said, with parking, especially if, it does develop there, and you're going to lose a lot of spaces with them, so that is something I'd be willing to waive. That's it, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, the concerns that are raised, I don't have an issue waiving the traffic study. I mean, obviously, this lot was built as a shopping center, decades and decades ago. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot more traffic now than you would have back when it was originally built, because obviously it was all macadam, it was all parking spaces, and the stores that are there now. So I don't necessarily see the need for a full-blown traffic study. And I'm fine with the majority, or with a lot of the waivers. I have to sort of change gears a little bit just because I'm curious about, I'm looking at the diagram of the interior space once it's sort of divided up. And it looks as if some of the areas that are being considered, and maybe this is just because it's partial, kind of sketch plan, doesn't look like a lot of them have any access to bathrooms. So I'm wondering, how that's kind of being thought of and how that's kind of arranged. I mean, it looks like some of these stores that you're sort of contemplating that doesn't, I'm not sure where the bathrooms are. I mean, I think I see bathrooms, but
Plumbing for each one.
Well, each unit will have its own bathroom.
All right.
There's plumbing to each unit. Some of those stores in the middle, right now, the only tenant we have is Dollar Tree.
Right.
And ourselves. So as we can fill those middle spaces up, hopefully, we don't know, somebody might want 10,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet, or we kind of sized it up for smaller units, thinking that's the market right now. That could change, but there's under slab plumbing so that each store would have its own lab and anything else it might need.
okay. So the
There's
plum.
not a common bathroom in the whole.
Right, yeah, because I see one, with the big space, it's going to be Dollar Tree. I see one, which is going to be the garden center. The three in the middle, I thought maybe you just hadn't sort of drawn it in because it's
We don't-
conceptual right now.
Yeah, we don't know what the fit-out's going to end up.
All right. I mean, I agree with Mr. Dents. I don't, I like the idea of an easement along Trenton Road. I don't necessarily think there needs to be sidewalks, leading into a forest. I think it's a little bit of a waste. In terms of going down Orleans Avenue, I mean, I know right now there's a sidewalk that goes down to sort of the back of the Rite Aid property and then sort of stops. And then there's nothing from there on the Orleans side. I'd be in favor of extending that, I guess maybe just toward the rear of your property, or rear of the store, I should say, not the property. Extending it from there sort of around to that area, I think is sort of something that could be done and maybe should be done. Going all the way down to the Vermilion Hills, to Trenton Road, I don't know if that's necessary. That's my thought. I don't know if that's a compromise that makes sense, or if I'm just making things more difficult. In terms of the planters, I mean, I tend to see, and we had a discussion earlier about this with staff, I think about the parking lot for the shopping center where Giant is across the street from Farrell's Fire Company. I don't think Philadelphia Airport has as many parking spots as that shopping center has, and they're virtually all empty on that side. So I tend to think that we plan for, in engineering, we kind of plan for too many parking spaces. Obviously, Mr. Steinberg hopes that they're all filled all the time. It's good for him and good for all the business owners. And so in terms of putting in the planters, I don't necessarily know how much of an impediment it's going to be to taking up spots. I mean, you already have light standards that are there, Is it possible that the light standards that are there, you could have planters sort of just build around them, the light standards aren't moving, correct?
They seem to all fall in like the middle of 4 parking spots.
Okay.
And, you know, we feel that, you know, resealing it, getting a good bright striping on there will, you know, soothe traffic and, you know, it'll preserve the spaces for, and, you know, I know you family shops there, and May and June, you know, that parking lot fills up, and very hard for people to load their cars when they pull up next to one of those islands and you can't get in, and also makes it difficult with plowing and that sort of thing. Getting back to the sidewalks, you know, I kind of looked at the site, and I had thought as a compromise, similar to what you said, but coming from the back of the drugstore where their sidewalk ends.
Take the mic, if you got it, you can take the microphone out.
Down to the front of the building, so that people they can come up. The sidewalk runs the whole length on this other side.
Right.
That's really not used. And, you know, it's not just the cost of installing the sidewalk. It's you know, maintenance and replacement liability. You know, there's a lot to it. But if we extended this down to the front, at least if somebody came up from Vermilion Hills on the other side, crossed over, shopped in Dollar Tree, and then wanted to go up to the drugstore safely, you know, most people I think would take a straight line through the parking lot, but at least we would have some sort of connection, and it wouldn't throw our project too far off budget, and then we're also there's a sidewalk that runs along the building here. We're replacing that. It's just, you know, a matter of replacing old concrete. So there is a walkway along there. That was my
Okay.
came to mind.
Okay.
You mentioned a buffer between the loading dock. That's going to be right along with the building, I guess, of plantings?
Let's see. This is a wooded area here, and I
No,
guess
I'm talking about up in the front, item number 6 on the list from T&M.
but for loading docks, right?
Yeah.
It's the loading docks are in the rear of the.
Yeah.
So this is wooded. It's pretty much blocked, but on the side here, there's a few open spots, and we're going to fill that in with some planting so that
Oh, I got ya.
to
But
shield.
nothing along the side, facing the...
Not along the side, but they kind of sit behind us, and there's like 2 spots there. There's some underground utilities, including high tension electric. So there's a little spot we don't want to go on top of, but we're going to fill that in so to give them some additional screening.
Mr. Sullivan, if this is a township road, Arlene's Avenue, we could put a crosswalk across there, stripe beside the street, however we want? Or does PennDOT have to get involved in that?
PennDOT would not have to get involved in that necessarily, but you have to ask Mr. Clark if that's something we could legally do in a public right-of-way.
PennDOT may have to become involved in it.
Microphone, Mr. Clark.
PennDOT may need to become involved depending on the proximity of the other PennDOT roads. PennDOT may be concerned about crosswalks that may stop traffic and impact back into PennDOT roads. I'm not sure if there is a PennDOT road near the road that's being discussed right now.
Trenton Road, yeah.
It also, I'm sorry, Mr. Clark, it also depends on where you're talking about putting the crosswalk.
Right.
If it's too close to the intersection with Trenton Road, as Mr. Clark has suggested, that might be a problem. But if it's where the front of the building is out or a sidewalk ends, then that might not be an issue.
Between the 2 roads.
And there might also be some potential liability issues for the township that we would want to explore. Putting a crosswalk in a 25-mile-an-hour zone and inviting the public to cross is normally not a problem. Putting a crosswalk in a higher zone, and I'm not sure what the speed limit is on this road. You want to be careful about that. You're going to want to be careful about the sight lines. You don't want to put anyone in harm's way. crossing this, but it's certainly something that we could look at.
Yeah, there is a crosswalk at Orleans and Trenton Road, both going into Vermilion Hills towards Puss in Boots, and also from Orleans, from Avon Row over towards the Ferris Hills Mall at that corner already. Just doesn't go anywhere.
Right. Personally, I'd like to see it connected, but
Yeah, I don't know, do we want to, I see Mr. Binney's in the audience, do we want to?
Yeah, I was going to open up for public comment. I imagine Mr. Binney was going to get up and speak. I don't know if there's any other board comment regarding
at this
any
time, I
comments
might
or
come back to
questions?
something.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Public comment, Mr. Kinney.
Roland Kenny, I've been in Avon Road for 15 years. And me and Morris had a few discussions about that building. He's doing a fantastic job. I'll back him on everything he wants to do. It's ridiculous. And as far as sidewalks down that side, forget it. On our side, we get from Old Lincoln Highway down the Trenton Road. You're lucky if you see 5 people a day walk that. The only ones walking is the people that work there that don't have a car and live in Vermilion Hills. You don't need it. A crosswalk across to get to their shop, yeah. But I'll back him on everything he wants to do. Thank you. Good night.
All right, Mr. Binney.
The reason behind the idea of the sidewalks is when we approved the drugstore to be built, we required them to put sidewalks in. So they have a sidewalk that goes to nowhere. The bank on Trenton Road has a sidewalk that goes to nowhere. We're promoting people to cross it, Orleans and Trenton, by virtue of having a painted crosswalk there. So people cross there, they have no place to go. If we connect the dots now and people come in the future and redevelop some of these properties on Trenton Road, which hopefully they would, and we make them put the sidewalks in also, then we don't have the situation we have on New Falls Road now. And it doesn't come out of taxpayers' dollar, it comes out of the developers' dollars. So that's part of the logic for that. It would connect 2 sidewalks that aren't going anywhere. As far as the trees and the plantings, since this is a redevelopment project, normally I'd like to see that. But I think right now, because it's dark, people are just zooming through there any which way they can. I think once it's lit and once there's people actually parked in the parking lot, it'll direct traffic to the normal flows where it should be, and it probably won't have that problem. So I don't think the trees are that big of a deal, but I think we should connect the dots on the sidewalk and maintain the philosophy that when people come in, if they're going to redevelop and they have a sidewalk that's not connected, that we should connect it, and eventually we'll have it. So,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, thank you. Sorry, ma'am. This gentleman in the back had his hand up first. Sorry.
So he's Brian is pro sidewalks.
Ted Sanaki, Falls Township. It looks like a beautiful project, but I think one of my concerns are they probably sell a lot of the same things that some of the stores in the adjacent Path Mart and Five Below sell. I mean, we may be juxtaposing the issue of where we had that eyesore for years, which is a thorn I know in the side of the township, and I'm sure their intentions are well. There's probably no ill intentions, but I mean, what would the effects on these other stores be? Because we put 1 or 2 of them out of business, then we still have the same thing, abandoned buildings, and I have some selfish reasons. My wife works at Pathmart, and I know they're struggling. Their stores are struggling. Maybe, I mean, these people probably have a better marketing strategy than the rest of them. I know that's business, but I don't think there's much you can do about it. But just to think about that, we start putting these other stores out of business, we're going to have another lot of buildings that could be abandoned, and just companies come and go on like they have over the years. Just something to think about. Like I said, I'm sure their intentions are well, and they probably have a good marketing, but they do sell some of the same products or most of the same products as these other stores that are in there. I think it's Five Below. There's another one of them dollar stores in
lots,
there.
yeah.
So, I mean, to be competitive, you know, would it actually bring more traffic into benefit? Has anybody been thinking about a study like that? Would that actually contribute, or would it detract? I mean, beautiful building. I'm sure people all want to go there, you know.
Yeah, it's a valid concern, Mr. Sanaki. Unfortunately, that's not something we're really allowed to consider.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, I mean, we've had that situation before when there was a restaurant that wanted to go in on New Falls Road, and there was a neighboring property a little down the street that had sort of a restaurant, and they were sort of angry at us for allowing them to go in. We don't have the authority to really say, well, we already have enough restaurants on that street, you can't go there. But that's, I mean, obviously, the garden centers is there already. It's expanding, but not really going to change.
It doesn't compete with the other
Right, that doesn't.
entities that are there.
You know, the Dollar Tree, I agree with you, there are a couple different stores in that, the current Pathmark Shopping Center that kind of are in that field, but that's, I mean, that's sort of, that's.
So it wasn't,
that's
this is kind of
capitalism.
odd. I had a conversation with one of the managers at Pathmark. I said, oh, look, I'm building a new store. And he went, and he kind of rolled his eyes. I went, really? And he went, yeah. He said, they sell the same products we do. You know, it would be a competitor. So I just, you know.
No, it's, yeah, it's about, but again, it's.
Because we might be, I know Mr. Kenny, he wants this thing done, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I'm with him 100%. So I'm done with it, but he may have that same problem. You know what I mean? But he won't be able to see it. They'll just see the back of it. You know?
Right.
So, all right. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. The man in the corner there, no, change your mind? Okay, that's fine. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Falkowitz.
How much square footage is being added to the building?
None.
How much, besides the sidewalk in question, how much square footage is being added to the impervious surface? Nothing. All right, that's all I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a current building. They're just renovating the interior of it. So, any other public comment needed? See no hands. Okay, is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, so we have a couple different thoughts, input from Mr. Binney, from the Planning Commission. Mr. Steinberg had sort of a proposal, a couple different ideas raised. So at this point, ball is in the supervisor's court in terms of what we're looking to do. I think some of these waivers, I think, are sort of ones that we agree on. The traffic study, the 15 feet open space between the curb line and parking area. The issue seems to be on the plantings in the parking lot and on the sidewalk. I don't think anybody has an issue with waiving the street trees. Street lights, a couple mentions of, I don't know if anybody has this feeling strong either way. I mean, I hear what Mr. Hecker's saying, that right now the building is not lit, and so it obviously appears darker. I drove it last night, and just to kind of see, you know, how dark it would be. And it is definitely dark, but again, I think there is some ambient light there it's not pitch black.
My thing with the streetlights was, if we were going down to Trenton Road, that I'd like to see some streetlights down that way.
For sidewalks.
On Arlene's, sidewalks, I'm sorry. If there's sidewalks going down Arlene's, it's really dark down there. On both sides, even the Avenue side is dark.
Mr. Sullivan, how does that work with the streetlights? The developer is responsible for the installation and the cost of the lights, and then we take over the cost of the maintenance and electric?
That is correct. Exactly.
Do you know how many lights would be required?
No more than two.
No more than two.
One might be sufficient.
That's all I have.
Other thoughts?
So the argument was that once the lights are repaired and functioning in the parking lot, this was your argument, Mr. Hecker, that would then light the area sufficiently?
In addition to the wall pack lighting, which will be on the building. Right now, it's dark.
There's no lighting on the building on the side of Arlene's Avenue.
And the building is 185 feet deep, so besides the parking lot standards, there'll be, you know, the wall packs going down the side of the building that'll illuminate pretty far down Arlene's Avenue. And like Mr. Kenny said, and he lives on the block too, there's virtually no pedestrians. And I know what, you know, I know what Mr. Binney, you know, about connecting the dots, and you know, the township's spending a lot of money in different areas now, but you know, I want to remind you, it's taxpayers' money, and I'm a part of that for the last 20 years, and I'm making a 20-year commitment here moving forward. And we're trying to reuse this building, and, you know, it's got to make economic sense for us and to try to draw other tenants in here. When they built the drugstore out front, you know, they let them, there was a lot of waivers granted to, you know, let them put that out at the road, and now it's such a big presence in front of this building. A lot of retailers have come, but they don't like sitting behind it so far, and plus it's all, you know, every retailer is represented down by the mall, so to get stores up there just a few miles away, they're all telling us, well, we already have a store, you know, in Oxford Valley, or if they don't, that's where they want to be, down in the ground zero.
Morris, would you consider a compromise with regard to the sidewalks that we were talking about earlier? Extend the sidewalk down Arlene's Avenue from where it currently stops at the Rite Aid property line to down alongside your building.
There's a lot. Where Mr. Harvey said to bring it down to.
I believe that's what he was saying, yes.
You're writing this down, Tom.
If that's what it comes down to, you know, then we'd have to do it. It's a sidewalk that's not going to be used. It's you know, it's more expense into this project that could go towards other things. You know, I don't know if it could be tied in, whereas if there is going to be a comprehensive plan on Trenton Road, that at that time we would tie into it. Also, one of the things Mr. Benny said about, you know, as different projects get redeveloped on Trenton Road, there's really no, except for in the middle of the bank, and then it doesn't, I think there's two different sections of sidewalk on that whole road, and there's been development projects. The stadium, or sports, or whatever that is there, was Cosmos now, that was redeveloped, and not only is there any sidewalks, there's curb, you know, there's massive curbs. Puss in Boots has, you know, did an expansion project, and same thing. There's huge curbs, and they didn't put. That would have been a good time to patch some of that in, but I'm not sure why it wasn't. But we just don't want to throw money out that they could go, you know, go into attracting tenants and you know, making this project viable. We don't want to. We don't want to start it, get Dollar Tree in there, and then the whole thing's half empty for years and years, and then everybody's saying, "What's going on up there? Why is you know, why is those cobwebs hanging off of that building?" And that, you know, that's my vote on it.
Okay. All right, what's the thought of the board?
Mr. Chairman, listening to, I'd like to take the advice of the Planning Commission, so I'm willing to, you know, put aside my concerns about the plantings in the parking lot. I understand the arguments about that. The sidewalk, I think, as I'm hearing everybody, it sounds like we would like to do something. It doesn't have to go all the way down to Trenton Road, obviously through an area where there's really probably is no one walking, but people are coming from the intersection up. Even Mr. Kinney said that. Maybe not a lot of people, but some. And it seems for public safety just important to do something. So the idea of bringing the sidewalk down part of the way and then connecting across with a crosswalk to the other side, that makes sense to me. Yeah. I don't know how other board members feel.
Yeah, it's only a matter of how far, I would think, on the compromise, to the front of the building or to the rear. And I know that the side of your building already has a sidewalk right up against it.
And again, there's a sidewalk that runs the whole length from Trenton to Lincoln Highway, and they could cross over at any one time. I'm assuming most of the pedestrians would be coming out of Vermilion Hills and across, you know, across that crosswalk around Avonroe and up. And you know, I'm on site every day for the last 18 years. Roland Kenny's, you know, there's just nobody using it, and I've noticed Rite Aid sidewalks already deteriorating, I guess, from salt and the salt spray from the road trucks. the little, the mats, the ADA mats at the curbing are starting to deteriorate and lift, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody walk up and around there. It's just, you know, I know the intent. It's just.
Okay, Mr. Rocco, Mr. Dents, thoughts?
I'm willing to compromise, I guess. I'd like to see sidewalks go the whole length. I understand Mr. Steinberg's concern with the expense. And the fact that there's sidewalks on one side of the road does make a difference for me. I'd like to see an easy way to access it, even if it is a crosswalk.
Yeah, I guess my feelings are pretty much the same. I would like to see the sidewalk all the way down to Trenton Road, again, tie into the crosswalk already there. I don't know if you know, but there's also a crosswalk once you get to your side of the road going to Puss in Boots. So it's almost going, it just gives you access back into Vermilion Hills.
I'm not sure what.
So if you're on your yeah, if you're on your side of the road,
Okay.
where your building is, and you were to walk on the grass towards Trenton Road,
Okay.
there's a crosswalk at the end of that curb to Puss in Boots. But there's no sidewalk. So there's already a crosswalk there, so.
Puss in Boots is east of there. That's
Yeah.
up and-
Right.
Yeah, no, I know.
Actually, yeah, I was
It
looking
goes
at it.
north-south,
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
your side of the road.
Yeah, there's a guard, if you think, coming down Arlene's Avenue, you're looking at Trenton Road, there's the street light, the traffic lights, and there's a guardrail, basically, if you remember seeing that.
So it
There's
comes-
actually a crosswalk that goes from
Straight
your
across our
corner,
leaves.
Guardrail.
straight across into the guardrail.
But that's not on my, that's not
Right,
on my.
it's leaving your corner going there, that's what he's referencing. That's what
Okay,
he's referencing.
that's a weird setup there.
Yeah, it is,
I
it is.
agree.
I agree with that.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think Trenton Road does need a comprehensive plan at some point.
How that there's sidewalks here?
But
Yeah, I mean,
if they cross over and they walk up Avenue Road, it's just at what point do you want to put a crosswalk in? And that's what I thought. If we did it at the front here, they could cross over, shop the stores in this strip here, continue on. If they didn't want to cut across the parking lot to the drugstore, and
He wants to come down here.
because they're not going to cross back across Orleans up and over.
There's a sidewalk
So
here.
that's what I thought would make the most, the most amount of sense, an economic sense for,
Right.
and something that would actually be used, not just sit there and deteriorate for the next 10 years.
I'm thinking about Mr. Sullivan's comments, too, about if there's a crosswalk on this road, keeping it a certain distance away from the two state roads that are on either side of this issue. That's almost where you're talking about the front edge of the store is sort of dead center. I'm not sure if that would seem like a logical place to put it, just to stay out of PennDOT's purview or not.
I think that would make sense, yes.
I don't know how the board members feel. If it's, I mean, I hear the comments, Mr. Binney, and I think he's right. I'm also wondering, I mean, I'm trying to help out Mr. Steinberg as well to get the store open. I know it's been a long time, as Mr. Hecker said, trying to get this building sort of renovated and occupied, and I think this is definitely the best option we've seen since I've been on the board.
so what about the option of not going towards Route 1 and going towards Trenton Road?
With a sidewalk?
With a sidewalk, right. So the sidewalk at Rite Aid that goes nowhere now, how many feet is that to your building, do you know? That's less likely to get use than the sidewalk coming from Trenton Road.
It's around 200, between 200 and 250 feet.
Right. I think to your point was who's walking up there or who's walking on it.
Walking back to Trenton Road, a sidewalk back here to Trenton Road, to me seems unnecessary. We have it on the other side of the street, very limited amount of pedestrians. If anything was going to get any use, it would be extending from Rite Aid down to this new strip, so that people could, you know, safely go up, and it does connect things a little bit. And like I said, if there's a comprehensive plan on Trenton Road, we could tie into it at a later date. It could be, you know, I don't know if that could be put on the plan, or I'm not sure the legalities of all that, but
I had a similar kind of question for Mr. Clark. Could there be, you know, some kind of phasing in where if we build a sidewalk that goes from the edge of the Rite Aid property back to the front edge of the building, Mr. Steinberg's building, could we include somewhere in the plan the requirement that within X number of years there must be a sidewalk that goes the rest of the building? That way he doesn't have to spend the money now, but within X amount of time that sidewalk has to be constructed. Is that something we could do?
Yes, you can. You could indicate a note on the plan, on the approval resolution, that at some point the sidewalks need to be extended. There could either be a time limit or there could be a triggering event when something would occur. This would give, Mr. Steinberg would be bound by that, and it would be binding on any future owners if that was agreed to by Mr. Steinberg.
It wouldn't require him to do it right now, or even in the next year, 2, 3, we could make it.
I'd rather see a triggering event. I would hate to see, everybody wants to see this be hugely successful. I mean, God forbid if it never happens, nobody ever moves in, and then he has no business there, and we required him in 3 years, he's got to put sidewalks in. That makes no sense to me.
And I think you'd be talking about a triggering event that wouldn't necessarily be what is occurring with Mr. Steinberg's business, but whether or not there was somebody on either side of this property that you'd want to link it up, which is a little bit of what we discussed with Mr. Hecker last week.
Yeah, I think the triggering event, what we talked about, was if, in fact, there is a plan or actually an obligation for somebody to install sidewalks along Trenton Road, that could be the triggering point for the extension of the sidewalk that Morris is suggesting to the board along Arlene's Avenue to connect to that.
Okay.
But there's already a sidewalk at the bank. That's your neighboring, that's your neighbor. So what would be the event that would trigger that?
There are many locations along Trenton Road where there are not sidewalks, and Morris and I were using the term, if there was a comprehensive plan to install sidewalks along Trenton Road, at that point that would trigger the obligation for him to connect to Trenton. Now you've got everything connected, all the dots connected.
Okay.
What are the board members' thoughts on that idea?
Where are we at now?
Requiring sidewalk from the rear of the Rite Aid property to the front edge of the building Mr. Steinberg is looking at now. And if there is some other property or some kind of requirement for another property, what direction would that be? I'm assuming we'd only be looking one direction on, was it east or west on Trenton Road?
West.
Yeah, west on Trenton Road. You know, that would,
Well,
you would have to install.
Even if it was east and there was a crosswalk there, or you're saying they're just...
Are there sidewalks already to the east? I thought there were already sidewalks to the east.
Okay with that?
There are,
No?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Harvey, we can identify the tax map parcels that would be on the other side of the property. We could put something in the approval resolution that would indicate if those properties are developed and sidewalks are installed as part of that development, that would be what would lead for Mr. Steinberg then to have to put in the remainder of the sidewalk to connect to them at the end of his property line, if that's the way you want to do it.
And not to complicate things further, Mr. Steinberg and I were just discussing that if you wanted to tie that obligation in to effectively the last occupancy permit for the last tenant that occupies this building. So in connection with the last permit that would make this 100% occupied, he would then agree to install it. That would address the big concern that he has right now about the finances going in to redevelop the building.
That sounds reasonable.
Either one of those or both?
Yeah.
Or
No, I like the idea at 100% occupancy, you'll continue to build out the sidewalks. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
okay, that sound,
I'm okay with that.
Yes.
okay.
So in the interim, we're gonna do a crosswalk?
Taking notes.
It's going to go to the front of his property, right? The front of your building.
And a crosswalk over to the
I don't
other
know.
shopping center?
This is,
Yes, yeah, well, that's something we can talk about, you know, where we,
Yeah, that
you
would
know,
be-
that'll be us.
Okay, that's just us, got it.
Yeah. Wouldn't do either.
Mr. Chairman? Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, can the board and Mr. Hecker clarify what sidewalks we're talking about?
I'm not sure.
From the sidewalk, we're talking about asking, Mr. Steinberg to put in are a sidewalk from the rear of the Rite Aid property to the front edge of his building, okay?
At the driveway entrance.
At the driveway entrance, I suppose, yeah, right. 100% occupancy would trigger extending that sidewalk down to and around Trenton Road, down Arlene's and around Trenton Road. Is that understood?
Down to Trenton.
Down to Trenton. We were going to give you an easement on Trenton.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, okay. All right, that's fine. All right. Okay, so
So what waivers are we
That's-
granting and not granting
that
and
would
changing?
be, then waivers would be granted, how would you do, I guess consider a partial waiver for 19139G, 19161A?
Yep, that's right.
Getting confused, Clark.
Yeah, I know, which is easy.
Well, as long as we don't confuse Ms. Gallagher, it's,
I told her to start writing things down.
Down Arlene to the front of his building.
I think you're granting every waiver but the one related to these sidewalks and the one, apparently there is a desire to have some streetlights up on... No.
no.
So you're granting every waiver except with regards to the sidewalk, the approval resolution. I think it's better if this is edited instead of us just writing in some changes.
I would agree.
To make it clear.
Yep.
So as was just described and is now memorialized on the tape is what we'll put in the approval resolution.
So we're gonna redo that in the
Doesn't matter.
There's one other item, Mr. Chairman, if I may. With regard to the waiver of the traffic study, the applicant agreed at the planning commission that they would do a minor traffic count to establish the fact that their retail sales will be no different or less than what used to be there as a grocery store. Some kind of letter to that effect from a traffic engineer.
Yeah, that's correct. I
Okay,
did
so
mention that earlier
that's
as
actually
well.
part of the resolution you have now.
What does it
Can you
do?
repeat that? Say
Yeah.
that again?
Yeah. What was asked of the applicant was to provide a letter from a traffic engineer, maybe doing some minor traffic counts to establish that the previous path mark as being a grocery store would have a certain amount of trip generation, and that the proposed project being retail sales would have less or an equivalent amount of traffic.
And then what would if the outcome was different, what would happen? What would,
Then they'd have to do a more extensive traffic study to determine what effect that would have on the two intersections close by.
is that a PennDOT thing, or that's something we prefer?
That was something that they would do and we would review.
Yeah, okay.
It's just simply a matter of
It's all a
gathering the counts, the
Yes,
published counts from the ITE trip generation manual for retail 45,000 square feet versus supermarket. We already know what the answer is going to be. The supermarket is going to be the heavy generator. But
Yeah, so I'm not sure it's necessary. That's where I'm going with that.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it's necessary. Do you agree with that, Mr. Sullivan?
Absolutely.
He does now.
This is easy. Well, go ahead, Mr. Harvey, you had,
No, I agree. I don't
Okay.
think it's necessary.
I don't think it's going to tell us anything, and we're not going to do anything
Possibly
with the
make him
information.
do if it was a negative result.
Well, if the negative result, then you'd have to do a more extensive traffic study and then study the intersections, and, the worst case would be you'd have to do some kind of improvements to the intersections to either the signal timing or width of roads.
I mean, I
But-
think the signals are, it either, or you already have lights at those intersections, you have,
Sort of goofy spot there on Trenton.
yeah, you can't really add any more, ingress or egress, things, and I don't really see, you can't add parking spaces because, without tearing down part of the building, it doesn't make sense. So I think I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
All right,
On
so we
that
would,
basis, I would request a complete waiver of the traffic study.
okay, all right. So then a complete waiver from 19131I, 30I, excuse me, 19130I. And the wording, Mr. Clark, in terms of the I guess it's not a waiver from the sidewalk issues. There's just a trigger that'd be written into the agreement.
I think it's best if you approve this waiver of land development, subject to the township solicitor and Mr. Hecker agreeing on language regarding the sidewalks as discussed this evening. And we'll work on that language over the next day or so, and then we'll send it to all of you, and then once Mr. Hecker approves it.
Okay. Is that fine with the board?
That's fine, yeah.
All right. Okay, so this will be resolution 13-34. 34? Okay, motion to approve, resolution 13-34, granting waiver of land development for 610 Lincoln Highway, granting all the waivers listed, subject to agreement by the solicitor and the applicant's attorney to language on sidewalks on Arlene's and Trenton Road.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Good luck.
I had one question. The Dollar Tree store, we're behind delivering their space.
Okay.
And there's some, now we have a February 1 date with them. Since you let us go ahead with construction for a single use only, are we going to be able to get them in and get their use and occupancy while we take care of these issues before we get the second tenant in? Which
Yeah, I don't see why. Yeah, I don't think that's an issue.
We have approval. The only issue that we're working out is the sidewalks. It does not impact the rest of the waiver, the rest of the resolution. I don't anticipate this will take us more than tomorrow, maybe into early Thursday, to get this language resolved and signed. So, but you have an approval only working out this language. It's not as if you have a tentative approval or a conditional approval. You have an actual approval, so you're ready to go.
In non-lawyer talk, yes, you'll be able to get Dollar Tree in there as soon as you're done and you get it inspected. Yes is the answer.
Okay. And then in case, weather turns against us for the sidewalks or, the plantings in the back.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's
And you
fine.
need to start thinking about your sign, too. I know I talked to you the other day about that.
Talked to him earlier.
But
We will.
time is flying.
We will. I appreciate everybody that's, helped me along the way with this. Mr. Snipes, Mr. Rocco, Mr. Dents came out and see how we were doing, and really appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Snipes, talked to him about the property over the years. So,
Okay.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, we're up to, item 1. Public comment. There's a 5-minute maximum per person, 45-minute maximum for all speakers. First name on the list is Bob Bray, who I don't see anymore. I know he was here earlier. Okay. Roland Kinney. Oh, is he outside? Okay. All right. We'll have to come back to him. Bo Ostrowski. Is that right? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, there's quite a few names on the list. But this is, we don't ask people to sign in just for being here. This is just if you wanted to speak on an issue. Next name looks like Jim Aub. Is that right?
Hey, you too. Yes, I was here to comment on that item you got shelved.
Okay. All right. Michael Farris? Same thing. Okay. Mike Volb?
Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
First of all, I wanted to start off, I want to thank Bill Reese in the Public Works Department. I gave him a phone call a couple weeks ago about Trenton Road Park. There were trees ready to fall and basically kill people and stuff like that. They got a whole bunch of trash and stuff like that out of there, too. However, while I was back there, there was a ton of drug paraphernalia back there. Needles, gloves, bleach, all kinds of stuff. We also have homeless people back there from on occasion, unfortunately, which is where I have to touch on another issue. I'm here to voice my opposition to item 5 we had tonight on this proposed gun ban. Under Pennsylvania Constitution, we're a second-class township. We have no authority to touch it. It's a state issue. You have no more power to enact this than you do to change the speed limit out here on Route 1. You just don't have it. You mentioned Erie earlier. No matter what ends up in Erie, the issue is not just going to stop there. It will not stop there. Morrisville tried to do this. They found that it was illegal. Bucks County tried to do this. They found that it was illegal. Exactly who are you trying to protect? The criminals? Because all you do with a gun-free zone is tell the criminals, hey, they're unarmed over there. Go get them. Yeah. That's exactly what happens. Why do you fear law-abiding people? I just don't get it. There's no issue that's happened around here. This is a political ideology coming from somewhere. I don't know where. It needs to stop. I'm more than happy to sit down with you and speak facts about these things. I mean, if we were really wanting to protect children and stuff like that, we would take a shovel to Pinewood Pool. Far more children die from swimming pool accidents than from gun issues. That's a fact. It's not my number. It's FBI numbers. It's from CDC, Centers of Disease Control. That's where this stuff comes from. Again, deal with facts. If this is passed, it'll only end up in court. Other laws will come for it. For instance, it's going to happen. You pass something like that, people are then going to say, all right, you need to provide security for me for a gun-free zone. We're all unprotected. The only ones that aren't unprotected, again, are the criminals. I don't think the township's prepared to do that. That's not what they're in the business of. Taking care of the issues that we just had here with getting a dilapidated old building up and running. Hey, great job. I'm glad to see it. Glad to finally see that. Taking care of the park there. I'm glad to see that. That's what we're here to do. Not to take a national political ideology and try to backdoor it through a township. It's not the way to do these things. The government's here to protect the public, not to prevent the public from protecting itself. Did something happen to cause the need for such useless legislation, or is there a bigger agenda trying to take away the people's rights? My rights, your rights. I'm more than willing to sit down and have a discussion, again, with any one of you who wants facts so we can make a proper decision. Too many of these laws, I'm sorry, I'm going to call it what it is, are designed to get votes. Hey, look at me, look what I did. Law means nothing, doesn't save a life, but hey, look what I did for you. Vote for me. My father gave me an old saying. Again, these laws are based on rhetoric. My father gave me an old saying, when you repeat someone else's lie, you become a liar. And that's what goes on with a lot of this crowd when they put information out in an anti-gun agenda. I try to be open and fair with it, and none of it I ever see is fact-based. It's all from the heart-based, thought-based. None of it's fact-based. I really think you gentlemen are better than that. Plain and simple here, what it comes down to for me, if you choose to ignore the Second Amendment, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania State Constitution, and we the people, I have 4 strong words for you. I will not comply. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kinney came back in. Mr. Kinney, we called your name. You're outside.
Roland Kenny Falls Township. Last meeting, I thanked a few people that was at the 300-year anniversary of 3 Arches. I forgot a few people like Judge Jan Moslowski, she was there. Sam Snipes was there and spoke around over a half hour on his family ties with the 3 Arches. And the lady that saved 3 Arches from being, I'm going to ask you the name again, Robert.
This is Favati, I think it was.
Javadi. They were there. And somebody stopped me and asked me, said that $100,000 you're trying to get to fix 3 arches, the senior center, why don't you use some of it on the annex building? The annex building is the one next to the brand-new building over here. It looks like a shed. And I think with the $100,000, you could not only get double the shutters, paint the tin, paint the wood, replace the wood on 3 arches, plus get the siding that we did on the senior center and do that whole building, and it'll all match. And that'll take care of your 3 buildings. Well, 2, 1 yet to be built. I'll leave it go. Thank you. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you. Tim Watkins?
Good evening. I'm Tim Watkins, Falls Township resident. Reason I'm here to address the Board of Supervisors is I had sent a letter to the board here about a week ago addressing the proposed ordinance for the firearms ban. When I had seen the video playback on TV, it caught my attention. Where are we as far as compliance with state law that we have currently there? Hopefully, Mr. Harvey, someone here on the board read my 5-page letter. Obviously, you know where I stand with the Second Amendment rights, but more importantly, as a township resident here, citizen, you know, being compliant with state law, if tonight we were to actually have that ordinance signed off on, you know, where we're going to stand as far as litigation. I think in my letter that I had sent to you, you know, I had given some incidents, prior situations where other townships, boroughs, et cetera, throughout the entire state have, you know, saw the light and said, hey, look, we can get in some financial trouble here. And Mr. Dance, thank you for replying back to my email, by the way. I appreciate that. So, you know, going back to that, you know, I do have a couple questions for the board here real quick that I did forward to Mr. Dance, but in light of that actually happening where we're not become non-compliant, currently as we state, we're non-compliant with state law with the park ordinance that we have now with firearms. It's prohibiting that. According to state law, the firearms uniform code, or firearms law, excuse me, 1995, we're non-compliant. So where are we going to stand with that, you know, Mr. Harvey? How's the board here going to be impacted financially if this goes through and we actually have to defend this in court, you know, as far as our taxpayers' money? You know, we look at what's being fiscally responsible and fiscally unresponsible. Where is the great minds going to stay out there and say, hey, look, we can't do that? It's not right. It's not fair to me as a taxpayer here if that happens. You know, I'm not here to stand up and give you the Second Amendment and tout that at this point, but as a citizen, you know, I want you to look at the financial issues behind that. They're doing it now. Someone mentioned the Erie case currently. We got to keep that in mind. We got to look smart towards that and maybe make some better decisions, like some of the other townships. The Morrisville Borough, Newtown Township had to go ahead and repeal and amend their current ordinances. Lower Makefield did the same thing. I just looked them up also. Let's keep that in mind. Let's be fair to the township, you know, resident here, such as myself. I've been here since 1995, and then senior citizens here also. It's not fair. Let the state regulate firearms. We don't need to do that here. So, you know, I put that out to the board. Be happy to discuss this more. I've become more informed over the last couple of weeks of how state law and other issues have come to head like that. So I'd be happy to talk, you know, further past this if you like. in the future.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Roger Oler, I think, is that right? No? Okay. Mike Whalen?
Mike Whalen, Falls Township. Mr. Harvey, at the last meeting you mentioned at the end of the meeting during the board comments that the Republicans should be embarrassed about the lies. While sitting up there, you told a few mistruths of your own. You said that all the Democrat poll workers were all Falls Township residents.
No, I didn't say that.
Yes,
I
you
said
did.
most of the poll workers were Falls Township residents.
Well, I worked the senior center from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. There were no less than 8 union electricians there. 4 of them, I believe, were from New Jersey. One of them was a gentleman who was a Republican, an NRA member, and was from Columbus, New Jersey. Me and him had a conversation. I was told that they, as part of their apprenticeship, they had to be there. And they were paid between $200 and $400, depending on how long they were there. And while Mr. Borowski and Mr. Rocco were at the door shaking hands, somebody who, I think it was Mr. Dents, or somebody who looked a lot like you, showed up with vouchers for these union people to sign so that they can get paid. The funny thing is after you got them signed, they all left. So it shows their dedication. And as far as the soccer field goes, the point wasn't that the fields looked bad. The point was that you spent $30,000 on something that could have been done for less money. And the reason you did it was because you had the money. It could have been done cheaper. Thank you.
Andrew Dell?
Andrew Dell, Falls Township. I'm here pretty much for the same reason. I caught the, I had left the meeting last time, but someone told me I should probably watch board comment as Mr. Harvey continued on a 10-minute rant assassinating my character, you know, mentioning things like people like Andrew Dell. Now, I attend all these meetings. I volunteer my time, services. I take a lot of time out of my schedule to help this township. And there is multiple condescending comments made about me. I was not here to protect myself. I was here earlier congratulating Mr. Borowski on his win, but nothing was said to me then. When I left the building and during board comment, which I can't respond to, you went on a 10 to 12-minute tirade about me, and I just wanted to clarify some of the issues that you brought up. I have complained about this building. I complained about the moss growing in the hallway for 2 years, which someone finally chiseled off the window. Didn't ask you to build a new building. I just asked for maybe a little paint, caulk, you know, chisel the moss off, clean this place up a little bit. I'm not saying we might not need a new building. I don't think we need to spend $15 million on a new building. I think every project we've attempted in this township has had a cost overrun of 15 to 50%. I want a lot more research done on the contractors, what has to be done, who's doing it, what materials are going to be used. I don't want to see change order after change order. I want to know what we're getting for this building, and whether it's $15 million or $12 million, I don't know. I complained about this building, but I think continual maintenance to this building would have sufficed for me, and I was not complaining about tearing this building down. You know, I was told I had outright lies about the boat ramp. I said 40 people, 40 residents use this boat ramp. Mr. Harvey said, well, we sold 100 passes, and at least half of them were Falls Township residents, possibly 60. So we have a discrepancy of 10 to 20 people out of 34,800 and change. Still 99.7% of these people aren't using this boat ramp, and 500 day passes at the kiosk from going off of memory. So 50 people used it 10 times throughout the year, or whatever the numbers might break out to be, most likely non-residents, but they could have been Falls residents. Our numbers weren't that far off, and I wouldn't consider what I said an outright lie. We're talking about 10 to 20 people difference on our numbers, but it's still $1.5 million spent for for 0.3% of the people in this township. And he said I was basically insulting Mr. Sullivan in my comments. I didn't complain about the way the job turned out. Soccer fields, boat ramp, whatever the case may have been. I'm complaining about the amount of money we're spending on this. We spent, Mr. Whalen is wrong with his $30,000. We spent $250,000 resodding the soccer fields. We could have spent close to $100,000 to $150,000 less if we hydro-seeded it. I brought that up. All I'm doing is trying to save money. Don't want to see the kids playing on a poor soccer field. I just felt there was a different way to get to the same point, because you have to stay off a sod as long as you do hydro-seed. I think we'd have gotten there and saved a substantial amount of money. Again, not a lie. I wasn't complaining about the look of the fields. I just felt that we spent too much money on them. The $1 million sidewalk to nowhere, or I'm sorry, the return of the $1 million sidewalk to nowhere. This is a title for this sidewalk. This sidewalk, according to you, our first estimates 5 or 7 years ago was $1 million. They had to move all the poles. They were 8-foot sidewalks both sides. It was a title to the article in the newsletter. We have spent $110,000 on studies on this sidewalk. We still don't have a sidewalk in. I don't even see a line painted out there where the sidewalk's going. Again, trying to save the township money, not creating lies, not trying to skew the truth. This is the truth. This was a $1 million sidewalk. Obviously, you guys weren't going with it, but that was just the title of the article in the newsletter, $1 million sidewalk. And if people in Vermilion Hills were upset that I called it the $1 million sidewalk to nowhere, which I doubt anyone was upset about that, but I apologize to the people, the 3 or 4 that might have been upset. The main question I think that stuck in your craw, Mr. Harvey, was I called you guys a political machine. Now, the fact of the matter is, and most of the people know, every one of you guys ran against me. Every one of you guys was working a polling place for Jeff Boraski. You had Brian Galloway's brother, John Galloway, who made robocalls. You complained that I had Dave Heckler make a robocall. But you had Mr. Galloway, who's our state rep. You had our tax collector make a robocall. You had both these individuals working the polling places. All of you guys and your families. Jeff Boraski, I understand his family working the poll. That was a nice thing that his family supports him in his venture. And I congratulated Mr. Boraski on his win. I thought I was being a bigger man. But I'll wrap this up real quick. The fact of the matter is, you said that I received $11,000 from Chuck McElhaney, which I did receive. Okay? What can I do for a state senator? This is a guy who's in a Republican Party who donated money to me. You guys got $11,000 from the Electrical Workers Union, and the committee to elect Bob Harvey wrote Jeff Boraski a check for $15,450. Not to mention Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Clark each wrote a check for $1,500 towards Jeff Boraski. And my point is, if he's sitting up on this board, it's a little hard to criticize the people who are giving you your money to run your campaign. And you said, what can I do to Mr. Boraski? He's a big guy. Jeff is a big guy. Obviously, you're not going to physically intimidate him. But where the money comes from, Mr. Harvey, has a huge impact on the decisions people make when they're sitting up there. And I just wanted to bring that to light. I personally didn't make up any lies or besmirch Mr. Mr. Boraski. The only thing we did with him was put his picture on a rubber stamp. I already talked to him about that. I think we've gotten over that and he's past that. But there's no character assassination on my part to Mr. Dents, or Mr. Boraski. I think he's a very nice guy, and hopefully he'll do a very good job. But I just want to bring these points up. And next time, while I'm here, I would prefer that you make the comments directly to me and not wait till I leave the building. Thank you.
Kevin Williams, Falls Township. No? Okay. All right, move to the non-resident sign-in sheet. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Snaki. Go ahead. I wasn't sure if you had signed in because you were, I thought maybe you had gotten confused and signed in.
Ted Snaki, Falls Township. Good evening. I was watching the tape. I watch all the tapes, and I was inspired to come. Earlier, I know I spoke. That was just preemptive. Came to the meeting tonight to speak because I was inspired by one of our senior citizens last month, Mr. Mariani, who talked at the last meeting and was trying to tell people to come speak. And nothing would happen to them. They wouldn't be shot. So if you have an opinion, come in and state it. Just don't worry about being thin-skinned. Because of his comments, may not be received well. This might not be received well. A good example of this was himself. He was speaking about a controversial subject, painting his opinion with the same broad strokes as the board member. The board member referred to his thoughts as idiotic. So I looked up the word, not being a master word in the dictionary, but a variation of the word idiot. Idiotic, like or relating to an idiot, foolish, not very complimentary, respectful way of speaking to or addressing a resident, a senior citizen, and seemingly respectful man at all these meetings. He is not the only one that these kind of things have been said to. I have observed this of the alike treatment of others. I find this type of treatment distasteful and troubling. I feel the board members should show a good example to the young people that watch this, because these words are words we, today, especially in texting and stuff, where children are bullied verbally, and we know what the outcome of that is. It's been horrifying. So I think we need to select some of our words better. We're intelligent people. We could use many other words than those words that are hurtful, especially when our young children are watching these and they see that, and we're setting the example for them. So I think we all need to take account of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, first name on the non-resident sign-in sheet is Frank Gallo.
Good evening. Before I start, I wanted to, real quick, I wanted to commend the folks that take care of the County Falls Park. I enjoy that park with my little dog quite often. It's, they do a nice job, and the pride they take in their work definitely shows. So please thank them for me, because I don't know them individually. I promise not to call any of you idiots. Just don't call me one either, okay? Okay. It's an agreement. So, on Veterans Day, less than 2 weeks ago, we all talked of how lucky we are to live in the United States and enjoy our cherished freedoms. We honored the veterans that, due to their many, many sacrifices, protected those freedoms. These honorable veterans and their fallen comrades fought in many wars and in many countries that, among other things, denied their citizens the basic right to defend themselves. How hurt and ashamed I now am to have read that this board is now looking to undermine those same freedoms by proposing and supporting an amendment that would prohibit all firearms on township-owned property in violation of both our state's preemption laws and our very own Constitution. Even though you have now tabled this amendment, I'd like to share with you some of my thoughts that maybe, hopefully, you can consider and come to a more reasonable and thoughtful conclusion. I should say a different conclusion, maybe a better one. Sorry. No disrespect intended. Gun control has its roots in bigotry, hatred, and oppression. Much of this hatred can be seen today in the way that gun owners and supporters of the right to keep and bear arms are mischaracterized, threatened, and called all sorts of derogatory names, and none of which are true. Many of my friends and colleagues are sitting behind me. I would offer that the people advocating gun control efforts do not see the awful consequences that are proven to occur time and time again through modern history and current events. At the extreme, gun control has allowed for mass genocide of tens of millions of people. The most infamous, most well-known, is being Nazi Germany and occupied Europe, and the direct result of the Germans' Weapons Act of 1938 that started with gun registration, prohibition of Jews owning firearms, to eventual and complete confiscation. This same chain of events can be seen in modern history of China, Cambodia, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, and Syria. Every one of these murderous events were directly preceded by gun control schemes that methodically and progressively disarmed citizens. More directly, in our own country, many firsts in gun control legislation occurred directly following the Civil War to further oppress the freed slaves. As of right now, in cities like Detroit, Camden, Trenton, and Washington, D.C., Trenton's right across the river here, and we see the effects of that, we see populations of honest citizens disarmed by the most restrictive gun laws in the nation, being held hostage by gangs and common criminals. These laws are all passed with the promise of safety and security, yet we see the violent crime rates, including those committed with firearms, the highest in the nation. The story is repeated internationally as well in places like Australia, England, and Canada, where recent gun laws were passed and violent crime rates have soared. Enacting more gun control is not the solution that will provide the safety and security we all seek. The recent tragedies that we have ignited the fierce debate in our country regarding gun control are nothing less than tragedies. There isn't anyone that does not feel tremendous grief and sympathy for those that have suffered at the hands of a murderous individual. I, for one, pray daily that the survivors find some peace and comfort at the pain they've experienced for a long time. These tragedies, while we all want to prevent them, are no excuse to do anything for the sake of doing something. Honest, law-abiding citizens, the ones that obey the law, are not responsible for these terrible events and must not be held accountable for them by enacting further laws restricting their rights. But common to all these tragedies is they were all committed in gun-free zones, similar to what you propose in your amendment. Whether it was a movie theater, college campus, school, courthouse, or airport, they were all gun-free zones. One individual not obeying the law was able to take over an entire population of civilians, innocent civilians, obeying the law, and commit their evil acts with no fear of being confronted or stopped whatsoever. These gun-free zones, I suspect, are created by well-intentioned individuals, not unlike yourselves. However, very ignorant and short-sighted of the actual impact their laws would have. Criminals seek the easiest and most defenseless places and people to commit their heinous acts. Laws that restrict people's ability to defend themselves, especially those related to the Second Amendment, do not increase safety and security. They have the opposite effect. Criminals and those that commit acts of violence are desperate, and they fear no loss. They have nothing to lose. They're already in a despicable position. So what do they care, right? It's the law-abiding citizen that has the most to lose. I would also like you to note that Bucks County Sheriff's Department indicated there are roughly 30,000 concealed weapons permit holders in our county. I think that's almost about your population. But yet you don't see, and there's roughly about 300% increase in legal firearm sales. If the hysteria around firearms use and ownership were correct, we would see a corollary increase in gun crimes and accidents, yet we don't. The fact is, the area doesn't show any crimes committed by permit holders, and the FBI statistics show an overall decrease in gun crimes. As a victim of violent crime myself, I was left tied up, beaten with my head smashed and throat cut after offering no resistance and giving up everything I had by two convicted felons, one of which was still on parole and just released from jail. I lived in the gun-controlled utopia of New Jersey and obeyed their firearm laws and was nearly killed. You see, as a young college student with a car and a bright future, I had everything to lose by not obeying the law. But the criminals, they had nothing to lose. So who was in the less advantaged position? It was me. And I'm a law-abiding owner, a law-abiding person. Criminals could care less about any gun laws that are passed other than that they create easier victims. A criminal with the intent of committing crime needs two specific things, an opportunity and a target. What better place to find this than in a park or other community space posted with a no weapons allowed? The criminal's not going to stop and turn around when he reads a sign like this, let alone worry about the law. Sammy the Bull Gravano, I think you're probably all young enough, I'll say, to remember who he was. He had this to say about gun control. Gun control, it's the best thing you can do for crooks and gangsters. I want you to have nothing. If I'm a bad guy, I'm always going to have a gun. So here's what I would suggest. Don't pursue restrictions on our Second Amendment. Petition our legislators to account for the 2,000 semi-automatic rifles that the ATF, through Fast and Furious, let go to Mexico and never found, and those leaders are still in office. Petition our legislators to design school entryways with safety and protection in mind. School entryways should be hardened and an administrative procedure to allow entry. And petition state and federal lawmakers to provide programs for acutely insane and mentally ill. This is a terrible gap in our current health care and emergency care system. Lastly, but not least, develop a coordinated, highly focused effort on illegal gang activities and illegal drug trafficking. How much of the current gun crime do we see as a result of one or both of these issues? On behalf of myself and many concerned gun owners of PA, I want to thank you for your time and your thoughtful consideration. I have faith that you'll arrive at the right conclusion. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions if you like, but I think I said a lot.
Carlo Grilletto in Doylestown.
Yes, hi. I'm here basically, I want to make sure that, I want to confirm that you received the brief from our attorney representing us, the Pennsylvanians for Self-Protection objecting and the reasons for objecting to proposal chapter 199. Have you gotten that, or?
Mr. Clark, have you received that?
The letter we received from Mr. Prince, yeah, we received
You
it.
see that? Let me make just one comment. I could probably go on hours and hours and show the fallacy of gun control, but I won't, and you won't let me.
Right.
But basically what I'm saying, here's a concern I have. Myself, my wife, or any my son have a concealed gun permit. We're doing shopping, we're going through the streets of around this area. By accident, we happen to go across a street in your township that has a permit saying that is invalidating our permit to carry that gun. So now you've made criminals of innocent people that possibly want to go shopping.
Mr. Gulletto, you're incorrect. The ordinance we were contemplating would not affect someone in that situation.
It says that you cannot possess a gun on street or properties.
Township-owned property parks this building, for example, where our police department is.
But aren't sidewalks and streets township-owned properties?
There's a distinction.
No, there's a distinction between township-owned property and township-controlled property.
Mr. Clark, make sure you use the microphone. Sorry.
This ordinance and the ordinance in the township, in the parks, was only, and is only meant for township-owned property, not township-controlled property, like streets and sidewalks. In addition, this ordinance was a civil penalty. There was no criminal penalty attached to that. That was a mistake in your attorney's letter.
Well, I would refer to what our attorney said, and please consider it.
Okay, thank you. Roy Scheffler. Mistake? Okay. Tim, is it Suerman from Bristol? I apologize, by the way, if I think I'm doing pretty good with names, but okay.
Good evening, all. I am from Bristol Borough. My wife and I are currently looking to relocate our family. We're looking to Falls Township. One of the big concerns is I want to be able to protect myself and my family. I feel imposing illegal ordinances is the ones that was tabled tonight prevents me from being able to protect my family. It really does. I don't know if any of you have ever had a gun held to your head before, and I don't know if you have. I have. The reason I feel I'm still alive is I was able to pull my gun and put it in the person's face and hold him until the police officer got there. I was recently in a Dick's Sporting Goods down in Philadelphia. Mentally ill person. Tried to get behind the counter and get a shotgun. I was able to unholster my gun, hold my gun there until the Philadelphia police arrived. You would take that away from me if you impose these illegal ordinances in these parks, my family. My gun is concealed at all times. I'm not saying if people walk around with big rifles all over the place, that's still legal. But what I'm saying is you take the ability for anyone to protect themselves and their families. My wife and I were at the Oxford Valley Mall a couple months ago when the two people outside, I believe it was a Macy's, held somebody up gunpoint. My wife and I were parked a couple aisles over. We had left that parking lot a couple minutes before that. Had I seen that happen, I had my gun. I would have done everything to protect those people as well. Now, you put that in the park situation, you take that ability for me to protect myself and my family away from anybody. It's something to really think about. It's not just, we want to take guns off the street. As this gentleman explained here, it's not, the criminals aren't going to listen to anybody. They don't care. They have nothing to lose. The point they decided they were going to pull an illegal gun on somebody, they've already committed a crime. They have nothing to lose at that point. You take the ability from me and other concerned gun owners in the United States and Pennsylvania alone to protect themselves. It really is. I don't understand, you know, if it's just a ploy more along the lines to get along with everybody and to say we're going to do this. But I ask you not to be eerie, okay? You're not. We're not eerie. We're completely across the state. Don't judge on what Erie's going to do. Judge on what Falls Township and what the citizens of Falls Township. We're not Erie, okay? That I don't want you to turn around and say, you know, I do appreciate it being tabled, but it's kind of, you know, just putting it off just to see what's going to happen. I really wish it would have said, you know, you guys would have thought about it and said, okay, look, we do have people here that are concerned. Law-abiding gun owners. And they do have a right to protect themselves. Because by removing that ability to do it, and I know I repeated myself a couple times, you take that away from me. And if all you people honestly know, did you ever read the Second Amendment in the Pennsylvania Constitution? Has anybody ever read the Second Amendment in the Pennsylvania Constitution?
No.
I'm asking the question. There is no Second Amendment in the Pennsylvania Constitution. There's something much more powerful. It's Article 1, Section 21. It's much more powerful than the Second Amendment, okay? So I just want everybody to take a look at it. Take a look at Article 1, Section 25. It says so much more, and that's, just consider doing that for all of us, okay? We want to be able to protect our families. I want to be able to move into a township where I'm not restricted from being able to protect my family if I want to go to the dog park, if I want to go to the playground, if I want to go to a concert. Because as I stated, and many people have stated already, criminals aren't going to obey. They won't. Ask the two officers back there already. Criminals don't care. When they have nothing left to lose, hands off of them, okay? Allow us to protect ourselves. We respect the police officers for doing their job. They can't be there, okay? I could pick up the telephone. If somebody's kicking in my front door, and this is just an example, if I'm at the playground with my family, somebody pulls a gun, somebody's angry at their wife, they come in there, the officers aren't there, and 911 dispatch call isn't going to get them there fast enough to prevent that. If I'm there, I can do my best to help prevent that. If it's your family, how would you feel if the police officers couldn't get there fast enough? Because somebody crazy nut came in there carrying from Trenton or be it wherever, came in there with an illegal gun. Drug deal may be going bad, something happens. How would you feel if your family was in that park and there was no one else around to protect them, the police couldn't get there fast enough? I know I'm here with a lot of friends tonight. I know all my friends would do whatever they could to protect your family, my family, any one of your families. You have to take that in consideration. You take that ability completely away once you start imposing these illegal ordinances. Should it pass? Should the area get it through? What's going to happen? Is Falls really going to honestly go ahead and do that? Is Falls really going to initiate the same thing Erie's doing? I just want you to think about it, taking the ability away from me to protect your family. And it's not something to be taken lightly. It's something to be taken serious. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Eric Petroni, Warminster.
I thought it was a sign-in sheet too, but I'll still say a
Okay.
quick word. I had occasion to go into New Jersey yesterday. I'm on my 5th carry permit, so I've carried legally for about 23 years. I had thought to think about what's going on over in Jersey. I can't go into Jersey and defend myself, and I'm not trying to say I'm far from some kind of like vigilante cowboy. I dread ever having to pull my gun and shoot somebody. Seriously, because there's so much that's involved with it, whether it's morally, spiritually, or the law. I mean, there's all kinds of laws that protect that person that I might shoot, and all kinds of laws that would probably say that I did something wrong. But for me, having done this for almost 25 years now, I feel that my right to self-defense, and I'm not going to say God-given right, because God never said I could have a gun. Okay, so I won't say it's a God-given right. It's a human right to defend yourself. How you choose to defend yourself is up to each and every individual. I'm not telling you that my opinion will force you to pick up a gun to defend yourself, but this opinion that you would pass, possibly, would force me to put down mine. So, I mean, there's no equality of that. I mean, I'm not forcing you to defend yourself in a way you don't want to, and you'll be forcing your residents to defend themselves, or basically taking away their right to defend themselves. And like I said, I'm not thinking I'm going to protect you. If something happens, I was in the military, I was a Marine. I mean, it's in my blood now, and I can't get away from it, even though it was 30 years ago. I would defend, but that's not something I lay awake at night dreaming about, because it's not what I want to do. Please don't do it, because all I can say is the right of self-defense, however you choose to do it, is yours and yours alone. It's provided to you by just being a human being. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joe Sweeney, Philadelphia. Okay. Andrew Rumbold, Percy.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm here as a Pennsylvania State Constable, a sworn peace officer, and also as an oath keeper. to object in no uncertain terms to this proposal, this Chapter 199 that would make it illegal to possess firearms on public property. Now, you all, like myself, swore an oath to uphold and defend the Pennsylvania Constitution, correct? And, you know, that's the document that basically guarantees our rights. It doesn't give us rights. It guarantees the inherent rights that we're all born with, as people have laid out here well, including the right to self-defense. And anyone holding public office who won't uphold their oath of office should immediately resign, because if you're not going to uphold your oath, you know, you're not going to obey the rule of law. The Pennsylvania Constitution, it's Article 1, Section 21, that was referenced earlier. It's the Pennsylvania State Constitution was actually enacted before the federal Constitution, and where the states gave certain delegated powers to the federal government. But the Pennsylvania Constitution states, the right of the people to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned, period. Shall not be questioned. So when you think about that statement and what that means, not questioned, you know, what you're talking about here is certainly questioning it. In addition, this proposed, you know, so that should be enough, basically. The Constitution should be enough. However, our state has gone further and enacted statute under the Uniform Firearms Act that says under Section 6120, limitation on the regulation of firearms and ammunition. General Rule A, no county, municipality, or township may in any manner regulate the lawful ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation of firearms, ammunition, or ammunition components when carried or transported for purposes not prohibited by the laws of the Commonwealth. And one of the reasons for that is to avoid having a patchwork of laws that we would have to know in every single borough and municipality when we're going from one to the other, that we're not, you know, unknowingly violating a law as law-abiding citizens. So it's clearly not within the authority of this board to even enact this legislation. And as was mentioned before, you're going to possibly subject your township to legal fees and maybe even a 1983 civil rights lawsuit over it. And I don't think you're here to cause your township residents more money. So, interesting note is that your Chapter 199 specifically permits firearms to be locked in vehicles on public property, despite your website detailing a rash of vehicle thefts. Was even covered by the TV station. So by your statute, you want to encourage people to lock a valuable item in their car. I don't understand where it's coming from, quite frankly. I mean, what I do understand is that everybody's desire to do something after tragedies like Sandy Hook, but you have to follow the rule of law when doing that. Criminals don't obey signs. Only people, law-abiding, do. And the gun-free zones that we inadvertently create strip citizens of the ability to defend themselves, and those are where all the shootings happen. As mentioned earlier, you also have an illegal park ordinance right now. Bucks County realized this in 2011 when it was brought to their attention and they repealed it. So I really want to say as a final thing that, you know, firearms are the great equalizer. I think it was, you know, and you might recognize this comment, it was, you know, God created man and Sam Colt made them equal. What they do is they make a small woman equal to a large male attacker. Most violent crimes are perpetrated against women, and firearms empower them to defend themselves. They also offer power to the citizens against tyrannical governments, and that goes directly back to his founding history of our republic. So I'd encourage you to fully quash this attempt to infringe upon the rights of the residents and anybody else that would visit your public property and parks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just real quick, I want to address the one comment from Mr. Rumbold about the theft from vehicles. The rash of vehicle thefts we had were residential overnight thefts and were largely from unlocked vehicles. And in fact, there was somebody who actually had a gun stolen because they left it in their car, parked in their driveway overnight, unlocked. I mean, I'm just clarifying the issue. I understand that, and I'll appreciate everybody's comments so far. We have one more person signed up, and we have time for one more speaker. So I think is it Doherty? T. Doherty, is that right? Or, okay. from Southampton.
Good evening. I'm Tom Doherty from Southampton. I'd like to make a couple of comments, but first I have a few questions. Whose idea was it to come up with this Ordinance 199?
What's came up especially after the shooting in Ross Township, which is in Monroe County, back in August, where there were some elected officials as well as I think township officials in Ross Township who were killed in a meeting room like this one. That's when we began having the police officers come to meetings. There was some concern about the safety of the people that work in this building, professionals as well as ourselves. From there was a thought put into the fact that we have a police station in this building and workers in this building, and there's nothing to prevent someone from just walking in with a gun into a police station, and the concern about that. So that's really the genesis of this several months ago.
Well, that answers the why, and I saw that on the news myself, but it didn't answer the question of who started this Ordinance 199, who did it?
I think it was kind of all, sort of a discussion amongst the five of us, really, and I don't think
Everybody
it was...
raised their hand that was involved in creating this ordinance?
I don't think we have to.
I'd like to know I'd like to know where it came from. That's
The ordinance was drafted by the Solicitor's Office upon direction from the Board of Supervisors.
Who's the Solicitor's Office? Are they here?
Mr. Clark and Ms. Gallagher.
So Mr. Clark and Ms. Gallagher?
Ms. Gallagher are the two solicitors.
You folks came up with this? You wrote this?
We drafted it, yes.
Okay, and your intention is what? To...
You should have used microphone, Mr. Clark.
To make it illegal for anyone to enter any township property with a legal firearm that they have a license to carry?
I think the ordinance says what it's intended to do. That's what we drafted.
Okay, well, I guess we both saw the same news, what happened on television a few months ago, and someone came in upset, started shooting up a township building. I don't believe there was a police station attached to that building. But luckily, I believe that at one point there was someone came along that was armed and put an end to it, correct?
I don't know.
Somebody put an end to it, yes. Yeah. And we don't know if Ross Township if their township building or the meeting room they had a police station attached. We don't know that answer.
Well, I think you're overlooking the fact that an armed citizen could save your life. If there's an armed citizen in the building or in the area, or possibly someone that works here who's got a carry permit, legally has their firearm, they could save your life if someone comes in here. Because someone comes into any building with the intent for destruction, you don't know until it's too late. And there's no one here to protect you at that point. They're not going to stop because you wrote this ordinance. They're not going to pay any attention to it. It's not going to help the situation that you're trying to help. And if I'd like to ask you, are you familiar with the Pennsylvania manual?
Yes.
Okay, so you know that it has our Constitution, and also in this book you have your Declaration of Rights, and it's been referred to several times in the past several minutes. Section 21, and it states the right of the citizen to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. That's the law. That's our law. It's everybody's law in this state. And I think I'd be correct in stating that most of the people understand that it is not your position to go against the state constitution and the Pennsylvania manual. It's far over the line of what your intended duties are supposed to be. You're not in the best interest of the citizen when you do something like this. And as it's been brought up, this could end up costing the taxpayers a lot of money to defend this, and it's folly. It's already been decided. We're a free country, we're a free state. You could literally walk to the cradle of freedom. It's right down the road. You could walk there. And how did you end up with freedom? Through liberty. And how did you get liberty? Men with guns gave that to you. They fought for it. They died for it. And this book upholds that. tradition. And I'd like you to consider, instead of tabling this, you should just throw it away, get rid of it, dispose of it, and get back to the work of the citizens and the taxpayer of this township and the county.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank, we're finished with public comment. I want to thank all the speakers who came out, whether they're residents or non-residents, for their input. You know, as we stated earlier, one of the concerns which was raised by a lot of the speakers was about the legal exposure the township might have, and so waiting for a case very similar to this one to be decided would sort of give us some guidance. So that was something we thought of. And the issues that were brought up, the points that were brought up by the various speakers were all points that we all considered. Again, this was not something we decided to do on a Friday afternoon, and the ordinance was written over the weekend, and we just introduced it on like a Tuesday. This was something a lot of us had thought about a lot and continue to think about, but we appreciate all the input that was brought here, and we thank you for your time and all the advice and ideas. Okay, we're going to take a brief recess before we reconvene for the budget presentation. Okay, we're going to resume our meeting at 9:14. We are looking at agenda item, well, I don't know what number it is at this point, but the budget presentation for 2014. I see Mrs. Rukoff is here, our finance director, to go through this with us. I appreciate the work of Mr. Markey setting everything up here. Okay, Mrs. Rukoff, show's yours.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Look, everyone left. I'd like to present for your review the proposed budget for 2014. Matt has given me a clicker that I'm not real good at using, so bear with me.
That's the mouse button you hit. So.
Yeah, I know. There we go. The proposed tax rate for 2014 is 7.22 mils, the same rate as 2013. There's no tax increase proposed for Falls Township's residents. This rate remains the lowest tax millage rate in the past 20 years. 7 tax funds make up the total millage rate charged to township residents. The general fund, which is the chief operating fund of the township, at 2.63 mils. The street lighting fund, accounting for cost of electricity and maintenance of the highway and street lights, at 1.2 mils. Fire protection fund, which helps to support our local fire companies, at 1.25 mils. Fire hydrant fund, which is restricted to expenditures for the maintenance and repair of fire hydrants, at 2.24 mils. Parks and Recreation Fund, which is restricted to the development of recreational programs and our township parks, at 1.26 mils. The Fallsington Library Fund, which supports our local library, at 0.14 mils. And the Rescue Squad Fund, which helps to support our local rescue squads, at 0.5 mils. That brings our total millage rate to 7.22. In 2013, we had redistributed a small portion of the general fund taxes to increase the rates charged for street lighting and fire hydrant funds to cover their operating costs. That division of the total millage will remain the same for 2014. For every tax dollar paid in 2013, only 4 cents was received by Falls Township. The balance was collected by the County of Bucks and the Pennsbury School District. Residents' tax dollars are used to provide a full range of municipal services, including police and fire protection, construction and maintenance of streets and storm sewers, recycling, residential solid waste pickup, zoning regulations, building inspections, parks and recreational activities, and the maintenance and replacement of street lights. Contributions to our fire companies, rescue squads, and the library that serve Falls Township residents are also funded through those real estate tax dollars. What do those services cost our taxpayers? Based on an assessment of $30,000, a Falls Township resident could expect to pay $216.60. This is by far the lowest cost of our neighboring municipalities. Please note, neighboring municipalities' figures include assessments for trash and leaf pickups, which are free to Falls Township residents. Some highlights of the 2014 proposed budget are 2014 projected revenues, which include reliance by the general fund on host community fees of $11 million, reliance by the general fund on resource recovery fees of $950,000, and additional projected revenues including our local services tax at $400,000, the cable TV franchise fees at $700,000, real estate transfer taxes at $700,000, building, electrical, and fire permits at $795,000, and the state pension system assistance at $517,000. Budgeted expenditures from the general fund total $17,427,000. 57% of that amount, or $9.9 million, is used to provide police services to our community. Some 2014 proposed capital projects are the purchase of computer equipment, firearms training and supplies, and various other equipment for the police department. $447,545 has been budgeted for these purchases. For the Falls Township Community Park, $12,000 has been budgeted for the continuation of a two-phase goose management campaign. $175,737 has been budgeted for the construction of a sidewalk and curbing along New Falls Road for pedestrian safety. And the Public Works Department is in need of a new street sweeper. $270,000 has been budgeted for this purchase. The total 2014 budget, including all revenues, expenses, and fund balances, totals over $78 million. Based on the proposed budget, a total of $29.9 million is projected to be spent in the year 2014. The budget schedule for 2014 includes tonight's discussion, advertisement of the 2014 budget on November 22nd, additional budget discussions from November 19th through December 16th, public inspection of the proposed budget from November 22nd to December 16th, and adoption of the 2014 budget at the December 17th Board of Supervisors meeting. That concludes our presentation of the 2014 proposed budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll turn to board members. I know all board members have had a chance to sit down with Mr. Gray and/or Mrs. Rukoff, or a combination of the two, and have had access to this information, this budget information, for some time. So I don't know if you have any comments or questions necessarily, since we've all had a good chance to look at it and familiar with this presentation. But any issues to bring up, or comments or questions or anything? We'll start with Mr. Rocco.
No, none. Thank you.
Mr. Dents? Mr. Snipes?
No, not now. We'll have a further discussion later.
Okay. Mr. Gowie?
No, thank you.
Okay. And I don't have any. I mean, this process begins really kind of in August or so, when all of the department chairs in Falls Township, Police Department, Park and Rec, Public Works, Finance, Code Enforcement, the managers area, everybody sort of takes a look at the things they need and begins putting together proposals for a budget. And from that point, the job of Mrs. Rukoff and Mr. Gray is to begin to, craft a budget, try to keep as much as possible of the requests that are made by the different department heads, while at the same time taking a look at projected income and making sure that we can pay for the things that are being asked. And then obviously the supervisors are involved in terms of different issues regarding any of those or all of those different departments. And we have input, of course, in taking a look. But certainly the lion's share of the work is done by the department heads, but especially by Mrs. Rukoff and her office and Mr. Gray. So just to really get the budget to this point is a tremendous amount of work by them, and I want to thank them, and I know the rest of the board wants to thank them for all their work. All right, seeing there's no board comment at this time, is there public comment? Questions? See none? Okay. Is there a motion then to authorize the advertisement of the 2014 budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, item number 6 is consider resolution to appoint an auditor for the 2013 financial audit. Mr. Gray?
At the meeting of December 4th, 2012, the Board of Supervisors moved to appoint the accounting firm of Major and Mastro for the audits of fiscal years 2012 through 2014. Based on the satisfactory completion of the 2012 audit and the satisfaction with their firm's performance, it is recommended the Board confirm the appointment of Major and Mastro for the 2013 audit of Falls Township's financial records for the period of January 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2013.
Okay. Comments or questions for Mr. Gray or Mrs. Rukoff? She works a lot with these auditors as they take a look at our books. Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
No, everything I hear is that they've done an excellent job.
Okay. Mr. Dents?
No.
Mr. Rocco?
I have none.
No, and the price, and I apologize if I missed it, the price essentially for this coming year is the same as last year, which I think was also the same as year before that. So there's been no increase in price for the past 3 years. And I know this is a firm that does audits throughout, municipal audits especially throughout the county, so they have a very good reputation at a variety of places. So I'm fine with that as well. Any public comment needed? I see no hands. Is there a motion then to appoint Major Mastro LLC as the auditor for Falls Township for this coming year in the amount of $22,000?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, there's a resolution to go along with that as well.
Okay. This is 1335?
35.
Okay. Motion to approve Resolution 1335.
So moved.
Seconded.
We're spending money, so to do a roll call. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay. Engineers report is for November, or excuse me, is for October, I guess, dated November 15th. All right. Mr. Sullivan? What are some highlights you want to point out here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senior Center project is 100% complete, and the contractor has been placed in the maintenance period. There'll be a maintenance period of approximately 2 years for this project. Any of the landscaping that's been installed at this time of the year has some chance to grow, but in case it doesn't, they'll be back in the spring to take care of all that stuff. 2012 road program is basically substantially complete. All of the roads have been paved. There's still a couple of minor stormwater issues to be worked on. One is actually on Magnolia Park Lane, and there's a couple in Fallsington that we'll be dealing with that we should be able to resolve in a couple of weeks or so. 2013 road program continues. Stormwater and under drain work is done on Kirby Drive. The storm sewer that's sitting on Makefield Road should be started to be installed in the next couple days. They say they've already started, but seems like there's an awful lot of pipe laying around, but they'll take care of that soon. And then Peaceful Drive is the next road that will be started in that project. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Comments or questions for Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
No, none.
Mr. Dents?
No.
Mr. Rocco?
No.
And I have none. Okay, is there a motion to accept the engineer's report dated November 15th, 2013?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Bill list for today, this month. Bills in the amount of $2,864,369.45. Of that $2.8 million, $1.25 million roughly is payroll and health insurance. This bill list also includes money for $178,000 for the senior center, I think was the final amount of money, as well as disbursements to all 3 fire companies, $25,000 each. The road program, $344,000. Work on things like tree removal, $25,000. $33,000 for Levittown Feral Souls Rescue Squad. Improvements at Yatsko Field for $17,000 to improve lighting. With $137,000 for the 2013 road program. So, again, the bulk, $26,000 for street lights. The bulk of the expenditures are on a couple of items, the road programs, as well as improvements to the township. and obviously a little less than half goes to salary and benefits. Comments or questions regarding the bill list?
None.
None.
Okay. All right, is there a motion then to pay the bills, $2,864,369.45?
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, we do have a need for an executive session, but I think probably board members want to wait till the end to do that. We'll go through manager comment and board comment. Is that all right? Okay. All right, Mr. Gray, manager comment?
Yes, just a few items tonight, Mr. Chairman. On November 14, 2013, a hearing was held pursuant to Section 206-12 of the Falls Township Code regarding allegations that TNT Towing had violated Chapter 206 of the code. Based on the evidence presented and my assessment of the credibility of various witnesses that testified at that hearing, it is recommended the Board of Supervisors find that TNT Towing did violate Chapter 206 of the Township Code. It is further recommended that the following sanctions be imposed: a 30-day suspension from the duty tow list with credit for any suspension already served, and that a warning letter be issued that advises TNT that any further violations of the code during the probation period may result in a revocation of the wrecker's license. The board is asked to consider this recommendation at this time.
Okay, comments or questions for the manager or solicitor's office? Go ahead,
You mentioned a probation period. Can you clarify that?
There was initially, Mr. Dents, there was initially some consideration as to whether or not to sanction TNT with a one-year probation period following the 30-day suspension. At this time, I believe it is Mr. Gray's recommendation not to have a probation period.
30-day suspension.
Correct, but that a warning letter be issued that any further violations of the code may result in further sanctions, including the possible revocation of the wrecker's license.
That's all I had.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Gray regarding his recommendation? The 30-day suspension, would that be retroactive? Would it start today? How would that work?
That is the recommendation from the manager, but it's up to the board whether to accept the recommendation or change the sanctions.
Which was the
So would it be,
recommendation?
would it be
It was
retroactive to a
The
certain date?
recommendation is retroactive, yes.
Okay. All right.
And TNT has been suspended since October 22nd.
Okay. All right. So,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
okay, is there a motion then to approve the recommendation of the manager regarding TNT Towing?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Taking out the probation for 1 year was the manager's recommendation, was to dispense with that. Okay, Mr. Gray?
Second item, on November 13th, a hearing was held pursuant to Section 206-12 of the Falls Township Code regarding allegations that Knight's Collision had violated Chapter 206 of the code. Based on the evidence presented and my assessment of the credibility of the various witnesses that testified at the hearing, it is recommended the Board of Supervisors find that Knight's Collision did violate Chapter 206 of the Township Code. It is further recommended that the following sanctions be imposed. Knights shall be required to pay a $200 fine to the township, and that a warning letter be issued that advises Knight's Collision that any further violations of the code may result in a revocation of the wrecker's license.
Comments or questions for Mr. Gray?
I think $200 fine's a bit much. Not that I don't think it's a lot of money. I don't think a fine is necessary. I've seen a lot of complaints against towers overcharging, and on the stuff that we deal with towers is a bit over the top, some of the things that they do. And being late for a call, I guess it's a nuisance, but that's about all it is compared to what other guys are doing. Overcharging and stuff of that sort.
So what's the $200 for?
Just a fine.
Just a fine.
Yes.
So
Right.
that probably covered about a half hour of this hearing that took place.
Good point. I'm fine with that recommendation. Since you put it that way. How many of you were at that meeting?
Never mind.
Yeah, no problem.
I wasn't there.
There was one attorney present.
Okay.
So,
fine.
any other questions? All right, is there a motion then to approve the recommendation of the manager regarding Knight's Collision?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Just one other item. The Township received a letter from Liberty Coating Company dated October 17th regarding a refund of any unused portion of the escrow that they submitted to the Township. They do have a balance of $308.90. The board is asked to consider the release of this funding at this time.
Okay, comments or questions?
No.
No. Okay, is there a motion then to approve the release of the $2,000 escrow fee?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. We'll do board comment, and then we'll adjourn, and we'll have our executive session and give an update in the executive session at our next meeting. Board comment, we'll start, Mr. Snipes, care to start?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Good meeting tonight. And obviously, the bulk of our meeting was taken up with a conversation about a proposed amendment. Ordinance, I'm sorry. And I think that the board is doing the right thing in having tabled it until there were various comments made about what's legal and what is not, and that's to be determined still by the courts, I think. So I think we made the right movement on that. I did pay careful attention to what people said, took notes, and I know people spoke from a deep concern about protection and safety and rights. So I listened, and I know there are people that have differing opinions who might not have been here tonight. But I trust that this board is going to take all these opinions into account and is really going to hold close to one of our deepest commitments as we join this board, which is to protect the safety of our residents. I know we all have that at heart, the health and safety of our residents. So we'll wait and see where we get, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity to hear the comments and to talk about it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dents?
No comment tonight.
Okay. Mr. Rocco?
Well said, Mr. Snipes. I agree. I knew there was going to be a lot of people tonight coming out. I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought they were respectful. They tried to make their point. I think they did on some issues. Mr. Harvey, I thought you did a great job explaining how we got to where we are today, and we can continue to see how things progress. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Galloway?
I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. It's coming up, and enjoy your holiday. Thank you.
Okay. One, I guess, piece of business here. We have a gentleman named Henry Metz, who is a resident of Levittown section of Falls Township. He has expressed interest in being on the Disabled Persons Advisory Board. And he was here this evening, met, I think, most of the board members, and I'd like to place his name in to consideration for a position on that board. We'll say the position that has the longest tenure. I think that's one of the boards that we have several vacancies on. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, the exact terms of office, but we'll say we'll put Mr. Metz on the one that has the longest term of office remaining. If there's a second to that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. A couple statements made earlier this evening by a variety of residents, a couple on the soccer fields. The issue of the soccer fields was brought up by during the campaign. The fields in question are fields at the Township Park that were constructed well over 10 years ago. For the vast majority of that time, the majority of the maintenance done on those fields was done by actually the Falls Soccer Club itself, which is a very large youth sports organization in this township. Hundreds of kids are involved, dozens of volunteers, coaches, and organizers, and people that work the concession stand. And they paid for a lot of the renovations themselves for years and years and years. When it became obvious that two of those fields needed real work, we decided as a board that it was something that we needed to do for those residents and for those kids and those volunteers. there was difference of opinion over how exactly best to do that. We went with the recommendation of our engineer, who actually convinced the contractor to sod both fields for the price that he was going to charge us for sodding one and seeding one. Had he seeded the one field, the kids still wouldn't have been able to use it this year. And so we got both fields sodded for a price lower than it should have been. I know one parent on that organization sent me a photograph of a field in a different area, a different municipality that was hydroseeded as was suggested a couple of years ago, and that field looks like it's in the middle of a desert still today. It did not set right, the grass didn't grow well, and so I think, when anyone goes out and takes a look at it, we did the best job that we could, and I think we did a very good job for a good amount of money. Comments also made about cost overruns. My memory for the past 10 years, ever since Mr. Sullivan and his firm came on, is that most of the projects he's done have come in under budget. There have been very, very few change orders that have cost us money. In fact, I think there's been quite a few change orders that have come back to us. So I'm not really sure which projects have cost overruns. I'm not really aware of that many of them. Are there things that pop up? Anybody who hasn't ever done any kind of work on their house, they're expanding, they're building a second floor on, they're doing something, that when you open up that wall, there's going to be things you didn't account for, and you're going to have to buy a couple extra things you didn't think of. That happens in every project. That happens in very few of the projects done by Mr. Sullivan. And so I think that's a testament to him. And so I think that was an important issue to bring up too. In talking to Mr. Mariani, and Mr. Dent's talked to Mr. Mariani about someone calling him idiotic, and he doesn't have any memory of that. I'm not sure I have any memory of that either. So I'm not really sure where that comment was coming from. Finally, just a few things. Thanksgiving in a couple weeks, and want to wish everybody in Falls Township a happy Thanksgiving. I know a lot of food drives are going on, different kind of shelters and food banks are looking for donations. So if you have a little bit extra, consider dropping some off at a food bank, no matter where it happens to be. I don't know if the Quakers have a food drive. I know St. Joseph, the Worker, has one, and obviously Red Cross, certainly can do that. So let's think about those who are a little less fortunate and give them something to be thankful for. That's something we can do. And also want to wish a happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah starts on Thanksgiving night to our residents who are Jewish. Very happy Hanukkah. And for everybody out there, we ask you to keep in mind neighbors we have, friends we have who might need our assistance when things get a little colder. We have talk about leaves and accumulating on people's properties. If you have neighbors who are elderly and have difficulty raking leaves, it doesn't include Mr. Dents, who just doesn't like raking leaves. See what you can do to help them. See what you can do to help them out, and look after each other. We heard a lot of tonight from the people who were speaking about thinking about our community and thinking about and helping each other out. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and there are just a few of them. Again, thank all the people who came out earlier this evening and all their comments. Appreciate all their input. And as I said before, it is something we're considering seriously. We don't take it lightly. And so I thank all the board members for their input and professionals as well. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.